When my wife and I got to know each other, she was the sweetest girl on earth. I had been crushing on her for a long time, and couldn't muster the courage to speak to her for a while. When I finally did, Ava and I flowed so well, and our conversations were heavenly. She was the kind of woman I wanted, but I was shy around women. My best friend Joseph knew how much I loved Ava, and I wouldn't stop talking about her whenever we were together. So he encouraged me to keep being the sweet guy I was, and in no time, Ava would be mine. He was actually correct. As I began to spend more time with Ava, go on dates or take her to the movies, our bond grew stronger. And when I finally asked her to be my girlfriend, she couldn't say no. When I met Ava, we worked in different companies and I was doing well financially. My only weakness was talking to women, but after Ava became mine, I didn't have to worry about that anymore. We dated for 2 years, and I made sure she was the happiest woman on earth within those 2 years. I did all these things because I genuinely loved her, and seeing her made me happy. Also, before I proposed to Ava, she always told me that she didn't want the kind of public proposal where I have to invite her friends or throw a party, so I took note of that, and I asked her to join me on vacation, and within our 4-day vacation I proposed to her and she said yes. Immediately after we returned home, we began to make our wedding plans. We had a church wedding and everything went blissfully. After our wedding, Joseph advised that we move into a bigger apartment, and being that he had been my childhood friend and best friend, I listened to him. Luckily for us, we could rent an apartment some house away from where he lived, so he just needed to walk for about 7 minutes before getting to my house, and this was just perfect for me. I didn't want a situation where I'd abandon my best friend because I was married, and when I discussed it with Ava, she agreed. After we moved into the new apartment, the bond between Joseph, Ava, and me grew stronger. He wasn't married yet, so this allowed him to stay out late at our place or spend time outside until we were all tired. Also, I loved that Ava was finally getting along with Joseph and not uptight with him like she used to be. About a year after our wedding, my company laid off a lot of staff, and fortunately for me, I found another job, and the pay was even better. The only downside about my new job was that it required me to travel to other towns a lot. And I didn't have enough time to spend with Ava and Joseph like I used to. But I always tried to make up for my absence whenever I was around. And because Ava could not drive, I was forced to look for someone to drive her to work. We searched for a couple of people online, but Ava was uncomfortable with any of them. And in the end, I suggested Joseph, my best friend, since I trusted him and Ava thought it was great too. Honestly, I chose Joseph because I believed he could look after Ava for me while I was not around, but little did I know I was making a terrible mistake. I knew Joseph had always been the flirty type and always had his way around women, but I didn't think he could disrespect me, break my trust, and destroy our 25 years of friendship. One day, I returned home on a Saturday, and I was so hungry that I had to stop at Joseph's house to eat before getting home. So I called him before entering our town, and he told me he was cooking. That was the main reason I dropped by his house first. I didn't want to go home yet because the last time I spoke to Ava, she told me she was shopping for groceries, so I calculated when she'd get home to cook, and going to Joseph's house was the best option. While we were eating, I noticed that he kept typing on his phone, and I believed it must have been some new girl he was trying to get laid with, so I didn't even bother asking him about it. So immediately, we were done eating, and Joseph tried to pack our plates while he still held onto his phone. His phone fell on the ground, and in my attempt to pick up his phone for him, I realized he had been chatting with Ava all along. She even sent him a half-naked picture of her in the bathroom, with a towel tied around her chest and her neatly waxed legs. I stared at the phone and I could not utter a word. I didn't need a psychic to tell me Joseph was sleeping with Ava. I was so broken, and I left his house immediately. Ava was trying to cook when I got home, and I confronted her about Joseph. At first, she denied it and even asked if I had hit my head. But when I told her that Joseph was HIV-positive, she dropped the pan and turned in my direction. Ava asked me if I was messing with her, but I told her Joseph had been HIV-positive for a very long time, and that's when she broke down and began to cry. She admitted she had been with Joseph without protection the previous night, but I already knew. I just wanted her to say it. I yelled at her for putting her health at risk, and for breaking my trust, then I kicked her out of the house. We eventually did an HIV test and we were both negative, but unfortunately for her, several weeks later she tested positive for HERBs. At that time I was already processing our divorce papers, and shortly after that we divorced. I could not believe that despite everything I had done for Joseph and Ava, they still chose to hurt me like that. So I got a restraining order for them, and warned them never to come near me or my house. In the end, Ava and Joseph didn't last one bit. Joseph only wanted to pleasure himself, but Ava thought she could fool me and keep it a secret. Finally, she begged me and said it was Joseph that misled her. But I wasn't buying any of that. Ultimately, I was forced to leave the apartment because it was toxic to my mental health. This happened long ago, but I'm thankful I'm gradually healing from the heartbreak. OP. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. It must have been tough to find out that the two people you trusted the most could do such a thing to you. I'm also glad you did the right thing by getting rid of both because they could harm you more. Thinking that she begged for your forgiveness after breaking your trust and hurting you that way is laughable. Now she knows that she cannot eat her cake and have it. I commend you for prioritizing yourself and your mental health and leaving the apartment. Knowing that you loved her so much might be difficult for you to move on, but I'm sure you will. Give yourself time and heal properly. I am proud you made the right decisions and thank you for sharing your story with us. Now let's move on to the second story of the day. My wife and I were high school lovers at one time. We were the cutest and hottest lovers in school back then, but because she got entangled with one of the popular boys I did not like, we were forced to break up. By entangled I mean I caught her kissing the boy. After high school I went to college the following year, and I never really saw her again until some years later. That night I went out with one of my friends who was having a bachelor's party and coincidentally Nancy was there. At first I didn't recognize her because it had been years, but when she walked to my table and introduced herself, everything I felt for her back in high school returned. She had completed college and was currently working in the same town as me, so that night we chose to iron out whatever issues we had in the past and we became friends again. I was hurt by what Nancy had done, but part of me still wanted her back. We exchanged contacts that night and we began to talk to each other more. Then from there we started going out and dating again. While going out together we got intimate, and that's when we both realized that we still had feelings for each other. I did my best to hold back because I didn't want her to take me for granted. But when she confessed that she still wanted me, we made it official and started dating again. We dated for almost a year and after that we got married. Most of our high school friends were surprised that we got back together, and they ensured they attended the wedding. The wedding was fun and the best part was seeing faces we had not seen in a long time. Nancy was pretty famous and she was a social media addict. She got paid to influence brands, use and talk about products and so much more, so aside from doing her day job she also made money online. Though she earned more money than I didn't have a problem with that, but I didn't allow that to stop me from doing my responsibilities as a husband. I provided for the house, got her whatever she wanted, and even got her a car. We agreed that we wouldn't have children in the first 2 years of our marriage, because we wanted to make up for the lost time by spending more time with each other, and doing the things we said we would do while we were teenagers. We believed we would get married and we did. I was a very supportive husband and most times Nancy gave me access to her Facebook page to help create content whenever she was busy since content creation was easy for me. I never complained about her always being on her phone because I knew it was one of her means of earning, and whenever she was busy I'd help around the house, cook, go grocery shopping, or if we were both tired of cooking I'd order takeouts or we'd eat out. So in my own way I did everything I could to make her enjoy our marriage, feel comfortable, and still have the freedom to do the things she used to do before we got married. While I struggled to balance my work life and marriage life to make Nancy happy, I never knew that my wife was having an affair with another influencer she met on Facebook until something happened. The funny thing was she had mentioned the guy a couple of times and the crazy number of followers he had, but I just thought she was stalking her fellow influencers. One day I was at home taking my day off when I got a call from a truck company that they were towing my car. As confused as I was, I asked for the location, and I went down there only to realize that it was my wife's car. But the company called me because the car was registered under my name. I was shocked to see my wife's car there because her office was only a 30-minute drive from the house, but that location was an hour away from home. I didn't get it because she was supposed to be at work at that time, and I looked around for the sign of a women's store or nail salon, but I didn't see any, and she didn't also mention anything about going for shopping before leaving the house that morning. Then while trying to talk to the truck company guys, I saw my wife coming from one corner with her hands wrapped around the influencer guy's waist. The moment she saw me she gasped and was surprised to see her car being towed away. I was really heartbroken because from the body language I saw it was evident that the two of them had been intimate with each other. Without waiting for an explanation, I began to video the both of them, but the guy kept saying, "Sir, this means nothing, we were just having fun and she's all yours," and he was embarrassed by the number of people that began to turn heads. Finally, out of anger and disappointment, I yelled at them and asked Nancy if she had fun with other men to become their influencer, but she said nothing and began to cry. When her car was successfully towed away, I went into my car and drove off without her. I saw her fighting with the guy from the rearview mirror, but I already knew it was over between us. I got home and posted the video on her Facebook page because I had access to it, and I tagged the other influencer guy. I knew the post would be taken down, but before it was, many people had seen it and commented on it. She tried to beg me when she came home, but she met her stuff scattered by the door. I asked her to pack her things and leave, and she did. She obviously had something for famous guys so she could go on and live the life she wanted. We divorced shortly after that. I blamed myself for being so stupid. I ignored the red flag and believed she must have changed, but Nancy would always be Nancy. The news of our divorce affected her influencing business, and most of her clients closed their contracts with her. And the influencer cut her off for ruining his career, but she deserved everything she got. I've moved on now, and I'll be careful enough not to ignore red flags again in the future. OP, you were such a good husband, yet your ex-wife did not appreciate your efforts to make life comfortable for her. Not all men are like you, but she took what she had for granted. I'm happy you did not let her back into your life. She would have kept hurting you. It's almost unbelievable that she cheated on you in less than 1 year of marriage. I agree with you that she deserved everything that happened to her, and you've successfully gotten rid of a toxic spouse. I'm also sure you will not ignore red flags in the future again. I wish you all the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. I, 46 male, was married to my wife, 48 female, for 16 years. We first met on a boat, during a party hosted by her parents. Even though they really wanted grandkids, they did not like me. So our relationship was basically supported by them ignoring us. I honestly felt like she was everything I could have wanted in a lifelong partner. We got married and had 3 kids together. Understandably, my wife gained some weight. By the time our youngest was 6 years old, my wife was 275 pounds. After having 3 kids and being married 16 years, it's not hard to believe. My wife joined a gym, full of determination, one New Year's Day to get her old body back. Over the course of nearly 2 years, she worked with one trainer in particular. I knew she was working one-on-one with a trainer, but she told me it was a woman. My wife got down to 150 pounds. She looked amazing, and her confidence was soaring. Her parents watched our kids whenever she asked, but surprisingly, after her weight loss, we only went on a few dates. Since it had been a while since we went out, and she was down to 150, I thought it would be nice to celebrate. My reasoning was that my wife didn't want to bother her parents too much for dates, but I knew how much they loved our kids. So, even though they didn't like me very much and my wife usually did all the communicating with them, I decided to call and ask them to watch the kids for us that very night. My email was confused and told me that they already babysat the children several times this month. I asked when, and she hardly had the patience to recap with me, because she assumed I already knew about this. It came to light that my wife was dropping the kids off at their house whenever she went out with them, and during times when we both should have been at work. I thought of specific times over the past several months when she told me they were going to the park, shopping, or just out, and I trusted her. Now that I knew she was lying, I confronted her as soon as she came in the door. She became flustered and said her mother must have been mistaken, because she never lied to me. I tried to get any bit of truth out of her, but it only made her mad until she left the house alone. I did some sleuthing and found one of my wife's closest friends, Melissa, on the internet. She replied to my message of concern, admitting that my wife told her about another man. The trainer that my wife claimed was a woman was not. She told Melissa that about 3 months after she met her trainer, he started complimenting her and said he enjoyed their time together. That's when he got her attention and they started their emotional affair. Melissa was sworn to secrecy, but not for my sake. For my in-laws and my wife's sake, whose lives would become much worse if they didn't get to see the children whenever they wanted. I was devastated. I asked if this affair became physical, but Melissa didn't know that. I called my best friend of 20 years. Since my parents died and I was an only child, I needed his help. He never had children and had been 3 years since I spoke to him. He was successful and trustworthy, and agreed to watch my kids for me to help me through this mess. I went to the gym and found AP. I started yelling at him, accusing him of starting a relationship with my wife. He seemed extremely guilty and worried that I was causing a scene. He didn't know what to say to make this better, because there wasn't anything that could have helped. I started screaming in frustration with the past 16 years of my life, and my children's faces flashing before my eyes. The gym owner quickly rushed over within a minute. At least 30 people watched, eyes bugging out of their heads as the stranger tried to calm me down. We got into the security room with all the cameras, where I calmed down and explained the drama that concerned his employee. Together, we looked through camera footage of her visits with AP. It didn't take long at all to find footage of him touching and rubbing her when he assumed they were out of camera view. I hated seeing it. I hated that my wife didn't smack him across the face. The gym owner stepped out of the room to fire AP immediately, and then he begged me to leave his business out of this completely. He gave me a hard copy of the incriminating video clips, and I drove back to my friend's house in a daze. We hung out with the kids together until they went to bed. I talked his ear off, and he helped me to find hope in the future just before my wife called, crying. She already knew AP was fired, and I knew everything, so she begged me to forgive her. I told her to move in with AP. She said she couldn't but wouldn't tell me why. She didn't say she wouldn't, she said she couldn't because AP told her they were done. He was too worried about having to start his career over again, and whatever bad reputation I could stick on him for touching my wife in the gym. She freaked out after I told her she couldn't move back in with me or her parents. I hung up on her and called to tell them everything. They didn't want to believe it, but they didn't want to see my video evidence either. They told me they would make their own decision after our divorce was final. Well, after the hearings, it was ordered that I take primary custody of our children, the house, a little alimony, and child support payment from my ex-wife. Her parents were beside themselves. They couldn't look her in the eye, and I know for a fact that they no longer speak to her. I still let them have visits with the children, but it isn't often. Right before the divorce was final, my ex tried begging for our life back. She said without me and our 3 kids, everything in life is pointless. I still divorced her after 16 years. The hardest part was that she never admitted to having sex with him. She just wanted me to believe it was occasional inappropriate touching and maybe a few flirtatious texts. So I guess she expects me to believe that all the time she had her parents watch the kids over the past 2 years, she never slept with AP. I'm not stupid. OP, it makes me sad to hear this. Your wife's newfound confidence should have been a gift to you. To inspire your relationship after having 3 children, and being together for 16 years. She let this man she hardly knew flatter her and touch her in public. You can be sure she would have cheated on you until you found out somehow or she secured her place in AP's life to where she could move in with him. It's a relief to me that you called her mom and found out about her dropping off the kids. Thank goodness you discovered the truth and got away from this woman. It's great that she owes you money each month because you and the children deserve it. As a mother and wife, she abandoned and betrayed the 4 of you. She'll certainly have a hard time recovering from this. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Stay strong. Let's now get into our second story for today. I, 33 male, partnered with my best friend Steven to open a shop in Savannah, Georgia. It grew bigger than either of us even anticipated. We had a great time for about 2 years. Within that time, I married my wife, 29 female. She was frequent customer at our store and asked me for a job. We fell in love and Steven supported our relationship. She became a trusted part of the business but was the first to give up on it when COVID hit. A shutdown was ordered and we were forced to close up shop. My wife took no time at all to suggest I start looking for a new career. I was shocked and disheartened. I wanted us to support each other and share hope that our store would reopen within a few months. My wife was the first to get a new job. She was working while I procrastinated about getting a job anywhere else. So many businesses were closed. My only options were a super crowded grocery store, super crowded warehouse, or a food delivery driver for the restaurants that stayed open to offer takeout. I didn't want to do these things, and if COVID was such a danger, I didn't want my wife to work either. I told her we could probably survive off our savings for a while if she wanted to quit her job, but she refused and nagged me about getting to work. This put a strain on our relationship, even though I tried to make it up to her by keeping the house super clean. For months later, the restrictions were still in place. One day, my wife told me she was working a delivery shift. I went to the grocery store to pick up what I could with what was left of our stimulus check. The money from that check disappeared faster than any other money I had in my account. It didn't help us to survive more than a month. Despite my wife delivering food orders all over the area, our savings were diminishing as well. I got home and started unloading the groceries. I had to walk past my neighbor's door, and the curtain covering the large window into his living room was pretty thin. You could even see the entryway into his bedroom and half of his bed. Once I saw him lounging on the couch naked, having no idea that the curtain was practically see-through. For that reason, I didn't look at his door and turned my head away for the first trip from the car. On the second trip, I noticed two shapes out the corner of my eye which made my head turn. I could see him and a woman. I looked closer and I could tell it was my wife. They were making out on his couch. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt like the world fell away and it was all a dream. I knocked as hard as I could on the door, dropping the groceries. They both stopped and my wife pushed her face into the couch. She realized it was me. The neighbor, now clearly AP, hesitated to open the door. I didn't back off. I noticed a food delivery bag sitting on the table, and I could hardly believe it. I just wondered, was this just a spur-of-the-moment thing? Was my wife going to come out? What was he thinking? Finally, he opened the door, saying right away that he didn't want any trouble. I asked if his guess was my wife and he said he didn't know, but I just have to wait until she felt safe to come out. My head was pounding. I was so mad that he was telling me what to do. I went back in the house and threw the groceries into the fridge. I waited outside his door for a little while, but then I searched the area for my wife's car. She parked pretty far away from his house as if she knew she was going to be here a while, and didn't want me to see her car. When she finally came out to speak with me, she was extremely embarrassed and didn't know what she could say. I could feel the anger rising from my toes. I cut straight to the worst-case scenario by asking her if she slept with him because she thought I was failing her as a provider. She was shocked at the question, probably because it was exactly right, but she denied that. She said it was a spontaneous decision to make out with him because she'd seen him around and the COVID lockdown was stressing her out. I told her even that was unacceptable. I told her she lost faith in me and the business and cheated on me just 5 months after shutdown. She just tried to deny cheating on me since she only made out with him. I asked her why she didn't just dump me if she felt like making out with other men or entering another man's house without telling me. I told I wished she would have just talked to me, but then she said she tried to tell me she did talk to me by begging me to get a job. I told her that wasn't the talk we needed to have, and she probably wouldn't be able to understand what I meant. I was afraid of filing for divorce because she said she was only kissing him, and I didn't want to lose my wife after just 4 years of marriage. She was my world, so I told her to move out while I cleared my head and thought things over. She agreed because she didn't want me to leave her. Denying and pushing her away was difficult even with her betrayal. I decided to seek revenge on the stupid neighbor. He knew this woman was my wife, but he still took her inside and kissed her. It was easy to find his social media profiles and discover that he had his own girlfriend who was long distance. I wasted no time sending her a message about everything. She believed me and stopped talking to him immediately. I found out where AP worked and made several anonymous complaints and bad reviews about him and the business over time. He was fired after 6 months. He basically never left his house again. I don't really know what happened, but I never encountered him again. I noticed a thicker black curtain on his door. He stopped contacting my wife completely. Sober texts and phone calls to me, begging for mercy and forgiveness became more frequent. It didn't get to me at all. After the separation, I became certain I wanted her to be my ex and nothing more. After just a few months of drastic life change, she went into another man's apartment after telling me she was working. That's enough for me to lose faith in her completely. There are too many good girls out there looking for a stable man. I know I'll find a worthy bachelorette that appreciates and respects me. Since all this happened, I've reopened my business with Steven. With his help, we had just enough savings to get it back up and running. Update. My wife started visiting the business again as a frequent customer, just like how we met the first time. I've completely ignored her and refused to acknowledge her existence. Steven knows this, so he always handles her orders and never tells her a word about me or how I'm doing. OP, you definitely made the right decision to cut her out of your life. It's extremely wise to at least separate from a spouse for a while, after any kind of betrayal, to clear your head and figure out how you're going to handle it. She proved herself to be a very poor quality woman. She lost faith in you and grew impatient. There's no excuse for her to lie and make out with someone. As a married couple, the both of you should have been able to work together in understanding and communication to get through this time. It's as if she completely turned on you and only wanted to boss you around. She probably thought she was more responsible than you by getting a job, but then she just used it as a cover-up to cheat on you. I am relieved you left her. It's wonderful that you and your friend saved the business as well, and that you've managed to stay away from this woman no matter what. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a lovely day or evening. In today's story, OP found out his wife had a 15-month affair with their handyman. She then claimed she ended the affair after she got an STI scare, but now is begging for mercy after OP found out what truly happened, then exposed the affair to the affair partner's wife and fired the affair partner. In today's second story, OP found out his fiancée cheated on him right before their bachelorette trip. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. My career success came with working 80+ hour weeks and extensive travel away from home over the past 20 years. This clearly contributed to reasons for the affair. Since discovery date 10 weeks ago, I've been devastated personally and depressed for the first time in my life. I still cry every day and can't focus on work. I've been neglecting my companies. In the past, I never discussed my feelings with anyone. However, I joined a men's support group, which has been excellent. I've been reading about this topic extensively and have a few close friends that I can lean on. I'm hitting the gym. We also began marriage counseling. My wayward wife has fearful avoidant attachment and, to my dismay, admires the level of independent traits of a dismissive avoidant. Her love language is quality time, acts of service, and words of affirmation. I failed to provide her with those three things, but the affair partner did. The affair partner is a Spanish-speaking employee of ours. He worked closely with the wayward wife for a year before it became a full emotional affair. Early in the emotional affair, I discovered that the wayward wife had a deep friendship with the affair partner, a recently married employee that gave her adventure, etc. The affair partner and I are opposites, and I forced her to draw a new line that was strictly professional. I was naive. After her attempt to reset and break up with the affair partner, I recently learned the emotional affair restarted about a month later and did progress into a physical affair over the next 5 months. She had an STI scare that led to them fighting and breaking up. She slowly withdrew from him, trying to end the emotional affair relationship while keeping it as only professional. After about 18 total months, the emotional affair was fully over in late 2021. I don't believe that she ever wanted to leave me. She just wanted the extra excitement, and it became an unwanted attraction for her. I began discovering the details in June 2022. Since then, I terminated the affair partner's employment and believe the wayward wife now has zero contact. I want to reconcile with my wife and already have at a superficial level, so that our household is calm and increasingly affectionate. We are more lovingly intimate recently than we have been in many years. However, it seems fake because of her continual denial and lying about the events. I have always relied on trust as the foundation for a healthy relationship. In business and other areas of my life, I have zero tolerance for people that I can't trust. I understand that people make mistakes. I could have been a better husband and recently wrote her a long apology letter to have a clean slate. Of course, she has not apologized to me because she claims innocence and remains with the position that I need to work on myself. I have the ability to forgive what happened in the past. However, I struggle with the ongoing secret and lying. I'm convinced that she knows she made a mistake and wants to be with me. However, she has too much shame and desire to protect herself to admit what happened. She likely justifies it to herself because she ended the affair and has done a bunch of deep self-therapy where she feels that she is mentally healthy now. To me, it seems she will be lying about this to me for the rest of our lives. After continually stonewalling the conversation about the affair and evidence that I've uncovered, she adamantly told me at 7 weeks past discovery day that she would never talk about the past again. For the first time in my life, I literally screamed through the phone. It was devastating to hear because learning about what happened was key for my recovery. I'm having difficulty giving up the investigation and continuing to learn about the affair, which has helped me understand it better, mostly to protect myself in the future. Since then, I stopped asking her questions, which makes me bitter, but I am building a superficially happy relationship with her again. Due to this building resentment, I'm beginning to have strong desires to revenge cheat. For now, I'm channeling this energy back to my relationship with my wayward wife and setting up dates and weekend getaways. Logically, I know it's important for me to remain faithful, and I'm sure that I will. Is there any hope that we'll be happy for the long term without my wayward wife confessing and showing remorse? Any encouragement or advice is welcome. Update. Her final confession at 14 weeks revealed more lies at today's discovery session, week 16. Getting to a confession took threats of divorce, intensive marriage counseling, and an emotional outburst where I called the affair partner's wife in front of her. The result? My soon-to-be ex-wife admitted to having sex 2 to 3 times per week with our employee, our full-time handyman, for 15 months from February 2021 to May 2022. Supposedly, this was almost all in the back seat of her SUV. She didn't end it with him until after my initial discovery day of finding our notebook, which was only one day before I took her and our family on a $25,000 trip to Paris. She broke up with the affair partner after Paris because I discovered her notebook. She said that it was winding down anyway and was happy that it was over. She had tried to end it since it began, but didn't have the courage. It wasn't happy or healthy for her, but she was strangely stuck in needing his emotional approval. It was obvious from the notebook that her affair was tumultuous for 2 years. Initially, she had a 2-year emotional affair beginning February 2019 before the 15-month sexual affair began. I don't understand her relationship with the affair partner at all. She claimed limerence and was clear that she had contemplated breaking up with him for most of the 15 months. It was a constant drama. However, I was totally oblivious. She was having sex with me as well. We led a normal married life of sex 1 to 3 times per week, dates and vacations, etc. She had lived 2 lives. I think about it like she chose a second husband but just never told me. She claimed no other affairs. She wanted to reconcile, of course. Upon confession, I immediately called and met with the affair partner's wife based on the advice received here on Reddit. The affair partner's wife was devastated, but so happy to know she is planning to divorce and fight his immigration process. I am supporting her financially, including for her to have counseling. The soon-to-be ex-wife is an excellent liar who has passed a polygraph. I'd warn anyone that is thinking about using a polygraph as a truth tool that it can easily backfire if she's a good liar. She had used that against me during the 14 weeks of her denial. Now that I know, and the lack of true remorse during the 16 weeks, I'm ready to divorce. She is extremely sorry now and wants us to stay together. We're signed up for an affair recovery course. I'll use this to try to heal and forgive as we have 2 incredible children to raise together. She really isn't capable of loving the way that I loved her. Had some childhood trauma and maybe some type of disorder. Tonight, I got a beach condo to separate for the first time in our 20+ years. During the daytime, we're raising our kids and acting normal. It'll take time to separate our lives and get a divorce because we're financially complicated. I really don't know how to be alone yet. I'm truly broken without having my best friend any longer. Upon learning the truth today through a 3-hour marriage counseling session, it is really strange how good I feel considering this mess. I'm looking forward to the next chapter of my life. I couldn't have this positive feeling if I was considering to reconcile. Our kids started counseling as well. The affair partner spent significant time at our house and knew our children well, gave them many gifts, etc. We're all no contact and I'm trying to remove triggers from his presence in our lives. Thank you to this community for your support. I appreciate any advice or encouragement. Wow, OP. As catastrophic as that is, I'm glad you finally found out the truth. Sleeping with someone 2 to 3 times a week for 15 months isn't the action of someone trying to end the affair or of someone with any empathy or morality for that matter. She can sugarcoat it and say it was tumultuous and she just couldn't find a way out all she wants. Ultimately, she chose to climb into the back of her SUV with him for 15 months, and then allowing you to have him at your house and around your children while hiding this secret from you is just a whole other level of despicable. She was truly living a totally separate life with her affair partner. She has to have severe mental issues to be able to do that and to be able to defeat the polygraph. You deserve better, and someone with your stats will find better. You are obviously doing very well for yourself. She, on the other hand, will have a difficult time finding someone to match your caliber. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Now let's see what the comments had to say about the situation. B197 said, "First time reading your post and I hurt for what you are going through. If your wife easily passed a polygraph, then she is at best a pathological liar and at worst a psychopath. From what I read from your posting, she is only wanting reconciliation so she can maintain her lifestyle. Once the storm blows over, she will begin to seek out another affair partner or try to get you to open your marriage. You said honesty is key for you, but she is not showing an ounce of honesty unless she is forced. This will never change for her regardless of how much counseling, individual counseling and marriage counseling that you go through. At this moment, you need to insist she sign a postnuptial agreement and agree on any financial issues now before there can be any reconciliation discussion. To ease her fear, you could agree to not start divorce proceedings for a period of time after the execution of the postnuptial agreement, but you need to protect what you have worked hard for over the years. Sorry, but if she continued to lie and withhold the truth from you, did not want to talk about the past BS for over a year, only for her mental state, then in my opinion she cares nothing for your mental state and does not deserve the effort you're putting in. You may have been a sorry husband and father, but she could have divorced you instead of cheating on you. She cheated on you because you are her golden goose and she did not want to give up her lifestyle. Move on from her. I agree with you 100%. OP's wife does seem to be at the very least a pathological liar to be able to lie so easily like this. Now let's get into today's second story. Hi all. I used to see this sub get referenced, but I never visited it because I never thought I'd find myself needing to. I'm an idiot, but I'm here now. After a 7-year relationship that I thought was rock solid, she cheated on me. We are and were long distance and about to start our bachelor and bachelorette trip, which many of our friends had committed to. I had been looking forward to this trip for over a year. Unlike a traditional bachelor or bachelorette outing, we simply planned a fun trip where we do everything together with friends. The wedding itself had been difficult to plan out, so up until a few weeks ago, we were discussing doing a courthouse wedding right at the start of the trip. In that case, it would essentially be a wedding celebration. I was so excited to finally marry her. Less than a month ago, she started behaving strangely. I ignored it for a bit, but started bugging her a couple of weeks ago. What's this disconnect? What is this detachment? Is there something we should talk about? She's in grad school and I understood how stressful that is. I wanted to know what was going on and if I could help. Suddenly, she told me she wasn't sure about getting married right away. She mentioned a break. She used to regularly mock the idea of people taking breaks in relationships. This about face confused the hell out of me. It made me a little suspicious. She then started listing problems with me. Most of them I perceived as relatively minor. Oh, did you cheat? No answer. Just told me she needed to figure herself out. She showed no remorse. She brought up weird rationalization after weird rationalization to explain that I was just as responsible as her. I got some details from her, and she insisted it was just one person. But she returned to him 3 times. It all started last month in May. Exactly around the time I noticed her behavior changing. Her plan was to go on our week-and-a-half-long bachelor and bachelorette trip and tell me about the cheating during it. Can you believe that? She said that was her plan. I think it was more likely she was going to hide it, find another excuse to eventually break up with me after the fun trip with our friends, and keep it secret that she cheated. I'm glad I got it out of her when I did, but at this point I think she isn't telling me the whole truth and that she likely cheated in the past. You see, she ended up explaining that she loves being doted on. I already knew that. She flirts with guys that she doesn't even like just to get them to give her attention. She implied that it was inevitable that she would cheat since I hadn't paid attention to her unhappiness. I'll point out that a couple of months ago, I decided I was leaving my current job and moving back to her specifically because the distance was hurting us. I had already committed to fixing that situation, and she seemed psyched about it at the time. But she told me that she's a very sexual person, and that she probably couldn't be in a monogamous relationship. At the same time, she said she hoped we could come to some compromise and continue with the relationship. Delusional. It's messy. I am upset and trying to get more details and understand why. But her lack of remorse is devastating in a way that I never could have expected. I needed her to acknowledge that she did something wrong, but that admission never came. Now she doesn't want to talk for a bit because she claims she is angry with me and needs to calm down. She thinks she is a victim. I'm going on the trip with my friends, her and her friends are not. I leave in a few days. Everything about this is heartbreaking. And I'm so lucky I have incredible friends. I don't know what else to say other than I didn't know how damaging this kind of experience was until now. The physiological effects are crazy. I just want it to be over now. I hate to say it, but it's pretty clear it's over. You're never going to get the full truth or genuine remorse, and she'll always be the victim. On the bright side though, you did dodge quite a bullet here. She's a broken person. You shouldn't need other people showering you with attention to make you happy. Her cheating would have been inevitable. No one man could ever give her enough attention. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but she did you a great favor by cheating before you got married. Now you can see her for who she really is and remove her from your life, because she will never be remorseful since it's all about her, and her need to have others validate her. I wish you the best of luck with healing from this situation, OP. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. My wife, 31 female, and I, 30 male, were together for 3 years and married for 1. We were both very athletic people. We actually met in a gym and started flirting immediately. It was so easy to be around her and talk. I never talked so much before I met her. We became best friends and lovers. When we got married, our parents were just as excited as us. My parents paid for most of our wedding and helped us purchase furniture and things to start off. A new gym opened by our house, so we got memberships right away. I was really optimistic and hopeful at this point in my life. I really had no idea how challenging marriage could be. After just 1 year of marriage, it was like the infatuation wore off and we started to get irritated with each other. She felt like I wasn't opening up or communicating enough, but sometimes I just wasn't in the mood to talk. Nothing was bothering me, I just didn't have anything to say. We got through this once by talking things out, acknowledging our differences, and promising to focus more on each other's needs instead of our own. Then my wife suddenly started having her gym trainer over to her house twice a week. Her reasoning was that she'd hit a plateau, and bringing the trainer to her would help her to reach her new goals. Well, I wasn't born yesterday. We didn't have weights or machines in our house. I knew our relationship was getting older and my wife was naturally a very flirty woman. I didn't want to be overly controlling and tell her I didn't want him in our house. I just wanted to see what she'd do with this freedom and trust. We had a hired security guard at our home, so I didn't feel overly anxious when I had to go to work. After the second week she had her trainer at the house, I arrived home and asked him if my wife was behaving. He just shrugged uncomfortably. I asked him what he thought was going on, and he said he couldn't give me a fair guess because each time she had the trainer over she sent him on a break. I was appalled. My wife was dismissing the man that could tell me if she was cheating. I asked if I could pay him extra to keep an eye on my wife, even if he had to lie to her and pretend he was going on break. He agreed. It was nearly summer, so my wife had the side windows of the house open on the day our security guard snapped pictures for me. I was at work 4 days after I asked him to watch her when I received them. It was like a slap in the face. I didn't actually expect my wife to be sleeping with her trainer, but my small suspicion and bribery led to the brutal truth. I was being cheated on by a shallow, flirty, sleazy woman that I tried to call my wife. I trusted her and gave her everything I could offer, but it wasn't enough for her to try and live an honorable life with me as her husband. All these thoughts and more rushed through my head as I printed the picture evidence and drove home from work. I thanked the security guard with a wave the moment before I unlocked and shoved the door open. They must have heard the door unlocking because they quickly got into positions that looked like training. With trembling hands and a faltering voice, I showed them the printed pictures of what they just did minutes earlier. The trainer's face turned ghostly white. He didn't want me to kill him, so ran out instantly and sped away in his car. My wife dropped her knees. She said this was the first and only major mistake she'd ever made in her life. She promised that if I forgave her for this, she would become the perfect example of what a wife should be to her husband. I completely doubted this, but I'm not a very expressive person, and the level of emotion I was feeling was too much to bear. I reverted back to spy mode, knowing I wouldn't stay married to this woman. No matter what, she would suffer for this. I told her that only a loyal good wife deserves the things I provided for her, like jewelry, a hairstylist, a car, high-end clothing and shoes, everything. So I packed it all away and locked it in the trunk of my car. It took all day, and my wife was sobbing almost the entire time. Even though she swore to do everything I asked of her, she didn't help me. I think she might have suspected I was going to divorce her, but she was too afraid to ask. She also didn't want to tell her parents anything about what was going on, because they raised her right. They wouldn't be dashing to her rescue just because she let another man inside her home. No responsible or honorable woman does that. She slept on the couch for a week without her normal routine or privileges. She actually cleaned a lot, in the hopes that would earn my forgiveness. While she scrubbed the floors like Cinderella, I plopped divorce papers down. She really lost it. When she realized none of her begging and sobbing worked on me, she left the house to call her parents. They came and got her, but only long enough to lecture her, buy her some Walmart clothes and bring her back to my house. It was humorous and frustrating at the same time. Eventually the divorce was done. Through the process, she was sleeping on the couch of our home until she was ordered to leave. She tried asking if she was entitled to half of my business, and the judge laughed at her. He shook his head and told her she had a lot of growing up to do, that she lost a great man and provider because of her actions. She didn't even have enough patience in our marriage to ensure she was entitled to half my business upon divorce. She made it clear that she wasn't very bright, and she only thought about herself. OP, I am so sorry your wife went behind your back to sleep with her trainer. She brought him to your house while you worked for no reason other than to start an affair. A mature woman would never flirt or put herself in a situation to be alone with another man. Marriage has enough drama and tribulations without unnecessary temptation. Two people with individual minds must be willing to be honest and do everything in their power to have empathy and consideration for the person they married. It's lucky you have a security guard to clue you in on what was happening sooner rather than later. Your wife didn't deserve the life of security and love you had in store for her, and thankfully you weren't married long enough for her to get any part of what you worked so hard for. Thank you for sharing your story. I wish you all the best. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I were married for a long time. She was never very fond of fishing. My father raised me with a fishing rod in hand by the water or on a boat, so she went along with me sometimes, but for the most part she didn't want me to go. After years of marriage we learned about compromising, so we let the other person come and go as they pleased as long as we kept each other in the loop. My wife would often go visit her mother or siblings. I would go fishing. I met a man at the lake who also liked to fish. He was great at it and always came well prepared with drinks he was willing to share. Sometimes his wife came along with him, and she wasn't bad either. I'll refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. Fisherman. When I told my wife I met a fisherman friend that brought his wife with him sometimes, she was instantly jealous and worried that I had flirted with Mrs. or liked her. I was too mature to feed into this, so I just laughed and told my wife I thought she was cute for being possessive of me. I had no idea she was about to ruin my life. She wanted to start tagging along on my fishing trip so she could get to know the people I hung out with. I think the four of us went on about 6 fishing trips together. In between those were times where I went alone or just me and Mr. Fisherman would go. On a night when I fished alone, I got a text from Mrs. Fisherman. She asked me if I was with her husband because he told her his plans were to go fishing with me. I told her no, I wasn't, which was decidedly out of character for him. He was usually very true to his word. I waited another hour and 15 minutes before packing up and going home. I was surprised my wife wasn't there. I called her several times with no answer. She returned home after 20 minutes breathless. She said she didn't expect me back so soon and that she'd gone to a Zumba class. This was pretty hard to believe. My wife did Zumba occasionally, but the class never went this late and it was far enough of a drive that she should have caught her breath by now. I wasn't sure how to approach her about it. We'd been married for 48 years, so the fact that I was suspicious of her was devastating. I just asked her if she knew where Mr. Fisherman was. As soon as I asked, I felt my phone vibrate with the text. My wife's heart was pounding, but she tried to be as normal as possible as she told me she hadn't seen him. She couldn't look me in the eye. I went upstairs to take a shower and found Mr. Fisherman's hat. Puzzled and growing concerned, I could only think the worst. I pulled out my phone and saw the text from Mrs. Fisherman. She said Mr. Fisherman just got home and he was acting weird. He said he lost his hat at the lake with me, but she already knew I didn't see him that evening. I sent her a picture of his hat laying on the floor of my bedroom. It was easy to see the bed was made in a hurry. We were disturbed at this point, figuring they must have slept with each other secretly. It was slightly easier to go through this with someone that was experiencing the same betrayal. They'd been married 43 years. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but surround yourself with people. Talk to people about what you're going through, because I never expected to lose the love of my life to something so needless and avoidable. After we grieved a little, we decided the next logical step would be to catch them in the act. And since we were certain they were seeing each other behind our backs, we went ahead and prepared divorce papers. I was at work 3 days later with divorce papers ready when Mrs. Fisherman texted me saying Mr. Fisherman said he was going fishing, but she didn't believe him. A follow-up text said she went to the lake shortly after he left and he was nowhere in sight. We met outside my house and quietly unlocked the door. We heard noises upstairs, so we ran up with racing hearts and found them having sex. I had to look away while they freaked out and ended the session, frantically starting to dress. My wife was already crying. AP just kept saying Mrs. Fisherman's name, staring at her as he dressed, like if he looked away she'd disappear. They were both realizing how bad they messed up. They were just caught betraying us, the two people who loved and supported them for most of our lives. This level of betrayal and the feeling you get is indescribable. I had no idea how to behave. I was embarrassed, so I just threw the divorce papers at my wife's feet and left. Mrs. Fisherman ran out of the house with her cheating husband AP, following close behind. They were divorced by the time my wife and I were. We had adult children that were so disappointed in her. Their relationship was never the same. They were as surprised and hurt as I was. She moved into a place 45 minutes away. The rest of her life didn't compare to what she lost. Everything she lived for the past 48 years was gone or tainted. I'm grateful for my kids calling me and keeping me involved with family affairs. Let this be a lesson to all. Cheating only brings pain and regret. OP, I can't believe your wife cheated on you with a married friend you met fishing. It started as something fun and calm to do together with another couple who were also married for a long time. Your ex turned it into an unexpected opportunity to bring distrust and the end of your marriage. It's a shame that they couldn't resist this temptation for the betterment of their relationships and the lives they built with each of you. Because of this senseless infidelity, your wife's relationship with her kids has changed for the worse. I'm glad you had support during this and after the fact as well. Do your best to remain hopeful and treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Honesty and compassion are main ingredients in everyday practice in a meaningful, successful marriage. I hope you are able to heal from this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.